I stand before you today to give you a crash course on the link between foster care, sex trafficking, and what we can all do to create change. I need for you to be fearless today and really dig deep. The conversation that we're about to have is probably one of the most difficult that you'll ever hear, but also the most important. The reason why I'm so passionate about this cause is after spending 4 years working as president of a nonprofit helping former foster youth. Prior to that, I had no clue about the foster care system or what happens. I spent so much time, energy, effort, and put my heart and soul into that organization. I spent time with the youth, learned of their stories, learned about how broken the foster care system is, and the link between sex trafficking. When you hear the words foster care or foster youth, what comes to mind? For most people, probably not much. And that's simply because most people lack the understanding of what happens to youth that go into the system. What happens to their biological parents, or their foster parents, or a social worker. It's truly a world that's foreign to most. There are 2 books that I like to recommend for people to read so they become more acclimated to the system. One of those is by Tiffany Haddish, called The Last Black Unicorn. And if you know Tiffany, you know the book will be entertaining. The other is called Foster Girl, a Memoir, by Georgette Todd, who is a lesser-known author, but not less important. Georgette's story was one of the most inspirational stories that I've read that truly rooted me in this cause. So you might be wondering, well, why is this important and why should we care? There are 500,000 kids in the American foster care system. And in California, we have 70,000 kids in the system. To bring it even closer to home, right here in Los Angeles, we have more than 30,000 kids in foster care, more than any other city in the United States. Among experts, it is no secret that the system is broken. Social workers are managing 30, 60, and 90 cases at a time. This is simply unmanageable. Kids are falling through the cracks, and so are families. It's one of the main attributing factors that led to the death of Gabriel Fernandez. Most of you are probably familiar by now with his name and his documentary. He was assigned 4 caseworkers who all failed to reach out to his cries for help. And this led to his torture and death at the hand of his caretakers. These are our children, and we are failing them. We need to become a society that cares about all children, not just our own. We need to care about the children that belong to our neighbors, that are in our distant families, and that are in our local schools. You might be wondering, how does someone get into the foster care system? Usually it's because they are in an unsafe home environment. So a parent might be mentally ill, might be addicted to drugs, they might be in jail, or even deceased. The goal of foster care is to reunite the biological parent with their child at some point. A lot of times it doesn't happen. Parents often find it difficult to get their life back on track. And the system itself is so bureaucratic, it creates hurdles for parents. And once the child becomes lost to the system, unfortunately, and usually, that's it. They will bounce from foster home to foster home. And if they're not adopted by age 7, they're deemed unadoptable. They will end up in a group home until they age out at 18. These types of experiences create a lot of trauma for these youth. The simple lack of access to affection and love. Now, don't get me wrong. There are really great foster parents out there that do amazing work and have sacrificed so much to give to foster kids. There's also a lot of parents that do it for the wrong reasons. They get a monthly government stipend, and instead of using it to prioritize the child, they use it as an income source. And once the child reaches 18 and they age out, that government stipend ends, and the youth is usually put out onto the street. A third of our homeless population is attributed to youth in foster care. 90% of incarcerated inmates have a history of being in the foster care system. And this brings me to my next point, that 80% of sex trafficking victims are kids from foster care. And by this point, it shouldn't be surprised when I tell you that Los Angeles is one of the leading cities in America for sex trafficking. Currently, the target age for a sex trafficking victim is 8 to 14 years old. Once a child is put through commercial sexual exploitation, they have a life expectancy of 4 years. And the reason behind that is, for one, they are sold over and over to so many customers, they end up contracting HIV or AIDS. The other is that traffickers are so violent, many times they're just beaten to death. And lastly, an 8-year-old, a 9 or a 10-year-old, their little bodies are not even developed to handle the act of sex. They experience so much physical trauma that they die from just that. You might be wondering, how does this all come together and how does it really happen? Jeffrey Epstein, who we all know ran a very famous criminal sex trafficking ring, was quoted in USA Today saying that they specifically targeted foster youth and girls from single-family homes because they are the most vulnerable. I attended the Human Trafficking Conference earlier this year in San Diego. We talked about 3 main risk factors that attribute to who becomes a victim of sex trafficking. One of those is youth that are living in unsafe neighborhoods. So neighborhoods that have high crime rates, gang violence. The second one is youth that come from poverty, so homelessness, not having basic access to food, to shelter. And the third one is not having access to healthy and safe adult relationships. When a child lacks security, love, and safety, they become targets. Traffickers target foster youth in schools. They track them in group homes. So often they'll follow them home from school, offer them a ride, offer to give them something to eat, maybe give them a gift, offer to take them out and get their hair and nails done. And these youth are lonely, and they are hungry for affection. And traffickers know this, and they use it as an opportunity to create a bond with the youth and establish trust, and that's how they lure them. And once a youth is lost to sex trafficking, the likelihood of them ever leaving or getting out, it's slim to none. The other thing you might be wondering is, well, why does this happen? It's because it's a business. Not only that, it is the second most profitable industry in the world. It ties with the arms trade. So for me to stand here and look at you and say we're going to fight this industry, it's very naive. They are far too powerful and far too dangerous. But I have a solution, and it's rooted in economics, and that is to cut the supply. When there is no supply, there is no business. And that's how you end sex trafficking in America. So you're probably wondering, how do you cut the supply? The answer is very simple. Love. You give them love by being a foster parent, a mentor, and in my opinion, and the opinion of many experts, becoming a court-appointed advocate. They have programs all over the country. You commit yourself to 1 year to a foster youth. You volunteer 15 hours a month, and you become their eyes and ears. You become their voice in front of a judge. You are their lifeline. And you just might be the person that prevents the next Gabriel Fernandez. In Los Angeles, we have about 3,000 court-appointed advocates. Being a foster parent or social worker just really isn't enough anymore. And who knows how long it'll take to fix the broken system. Imagine if every one of these youth was assigned a court-appointed advocate. We could change the game like that. Los Angeles, we have work to do. We can solve this problem. We are TEDxDelthorneWomen. And if we're ever going to come together for a reason, let it be this one. Through using our superpower, love, and doing it fearlessly and powerfully, we can create change in the world. So let's start with our community, and let's do this. Thank you.